Now, a League of Women Voters and 5 Eyewitness News Vote 2008 special presentation.
Hello, I'm Tom Hauser, and this is a debate in the race for Minnesota's 1st Congressional District. Thank you for joining us. Minnesota's 1st Congressional District runs along the state's southern border and stretches from South Dakota to Wisconsin. It covers 22 counties, including Nicollet, Houston, Mower, and Rock, and it includes the cities of Rochester, Mankato, Winona, Owatonna, Albert Lea, and Worthington, among many others. It's also home to Hormel, the Mayo Clinic, Fastenal, and Minnesota State Mankato. The incumbent in this race is DFLer Tim Walz. Before Tim Walz was elected to Congress in 2006, he was a teacher, a coach, a small business owner, and a National Guardsman. His 24 years in the Guard included 10 months working supply lines in Italy in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Walz has a master's degree in educational leadership, and he's pursuing a doctorate. Walz serves on the House Committees on Agriculture, Veterans Affairs, and Transportation and Infrastructure. He and his wife Gwen live in Mankato with their 2 children. And the Republican challenger is Brian Davis. Brian Davis is a first-time candidate. He's a staff physician at the Mayo Clinic, where he works in the Department of Radiation Oncology and serves as co-director of the Prostate Cancer Program. Davis also has a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering from MIT and a bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering. He also studied and worked in Germany. Last year, Davis was elected treasurer of the Olmsted County Republican Party. Davis and his wife Lori have 4 children and live in Rochester. And Greg Michelson is the Independence Party candidate. Greg Michelson is a farmer and grain elevator owner from Lake Crystal. Michelson was born in Mankato and earned an agricultural degree from the Mankato Vocational School. He's made 3 other runs for Congress. In 2002, he ran as a member of the Green Party, and in 2004 as a member of the Independence Party, and as a Republican in 2006. When not working, he volunteers with civic groups and spends time hunting and fishing. Michelson has 2 adult children, Adam and Aaron. And for the next hour, Tim Walz, Brian Davis, and Greg Michelson will discuss issues relating to this year's election. They are the candidates who meet the League of Women Voters criteria to participate in this debate. The debate will be split into 3 sections. In the first, we will ask questions that will be answered by all 3 candidates. I'll ask 1 question, then each candidate will get to answer that question. They'll each get 45 seconds for their response. The League of Women Voters drew names to determine the order in which questions will be asked, and our first question will go to the Independence Party candidate, Greg Michelson. Thank you again, all of you, for being here. Obviously, the economic news has dominated this campaign over the last couple of weeks. Congress recently passed a financial bailout for major private financial institutions. Do you think that was a good idea or a bad idea? Greg Michelson?
No, I don't, Tom. I believe that America would not be any better off with a bailout. People need to be responsible. There should be some consequences for their actions, and we shouldn't be rewarding bad behavior. Another voice that needs to be heard is the people who have been paying their bills, paying their mortgages on time, and those people don't want to be part of paying other people's problems.
All right, we move now to Brian Davis. Your response?
I believe that the bailout is a bad idea, that we've had problems in Washington and in Wall Street, and to ask the American taxpayer, middle-class taxpayers, to increase our national debt up to $11.3 trillion and potentially put up $700 billion is a big problem. What we need to do is get to the root causes of this first and try to correct it before we come hand in hand, before the government comes hand in hand to the American public on this. I note also that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a big problem in this area, and that my Democratic opponent, Mr. Walz, did vote for a bailout in July on this, which could have increased the national debt by $800 billion. So we need to have some consistency there.
All right. Well, in terms of the financial bailout, Congressman Walz, you did vote against the bailout package.
Yeah, I did vote against it, and I spoke out strongly against it. The problem with the economy in America is, as we've seen, the policies of the last 8 years under the current administration have shifted things to the top 1%. It shifted tax breaks to the top 1%. And the situation that I was arguing for and against this bailout, Tom, was simply because, a little example for you, I was down in Alden, Conger, teaching a high school class here a little while back. First-year social studies teacher down there, makes $30,000 a year, has $17,000 in student debt, and pays $12,100 for their health care insurance. This country has left the middle class behind. Our policies have left the middle class behind, and I've been a strong voice to make sure, whether it's the GI Bill, whether it's making sure we have a farm policy that provides a safety net, or making sure we work together to solve problems for the middle class.
All right, thank you all for your responses. Let's talk about tax cuts. Both the major party presidential candidates, John McCain and Barack Obama, have talked about some form of a tax cut or another. Given the current economic situation, our $10 trillion debt and our annual debt that continues to pile up, are tax cuts of any kind feasible at this point in time? We will begin with Brian Davis.
I believe strongly that we need to keep the current tax structure in place. I'm very concerned that these current tax cuts expire in 2010 and 2011, particularly as it pertains to the estate tax, otherwise known as the death tax. We live in a rural district. Over half of the population by demographics is rural. You have a farmer or small businessman that wants to hand down the family farm or wants to retire and has to pay capital gains tax. It's a huge, almost confiscation of property that the government is planning if this current tax structure changes. I'm not in favor of tax cuts, additional tax cuts right now, and I'm very concerned that the presidential candidate, Barack Obama, says he's going to give 95% of the people federal tax cuts. How are we going to do that when 40% of the people don't pay federal income tax the way it is right now? So that doesn't make sense.
All right, Tim Walz, your response.
Well, this question's a very good contrast, I think, probably with my opponents on this. Yes, we can give tax cuts, but they need to be targeted at the middle class. There's people out there listening to this debate today. You didn't benefit from the Bush tax cuts. The top 1% did. There's not a single case of a farmer in Minnesota ever losing a farm because of the estate tax. That goes to about 0.37% of all people. That's not what we need to get to. I proposed a middle tax cut that will allow the standard deduction to be doubled, allow them to deduct child care and take off their property taxes from that. That'll be about an average of about $790 for 61 million families that are struggling to make it meet. This administration, and by the way, mine is paid for. This administration has simply recklessly given tax cuts to the wealthiest 1%, many of who are part of the companies that failed, done nothing to pay for the war, and put this country in debt. That $11 trillion, half of it was under this president and the Republican watch. So, yes, we can cut them.
All right, Greg Michelson, your response to the issue of tax cuts. Should there be tax cuts, or can we not afford them?
Well, my general view is that our national debt is our biggest problem, and the easiest solution for that is to reduce spending. The other side of that component is we need to raise money at some point in time. When we had our Iraq war, we were never asked to ante up for the cost of that. I hate to see another tax on there, but people need to realize that if we don't raise taxes for the war and other issues, maybe like even a gas tax that we did in Minnesota here to pay for some of the costs out there, we're just pushing that onto our future generations, onto our children. I don't believe in taxes, but we have to have a combined effort between the two there. We need to reduce spending is the main thing.
All right, moving on to our next question.